The Kragenscharter Gobbler is a creature that I made using your favourite animals. As a thank you for helping me hit 200 subscribers, now almost on 250, I decided to ask the community, you guys, my subscribers, what your favourite animals are, so that I could smush them all together into one sculpture. And that's exactly what I did this week. I hope you like it. To start off, I cut 8 pieces of wire to the same size. The reason I did this was because one of the commenters suggested a kraken. That's what I did. I cut pieces of wire, bent them into these nice swirly tentacle kind of shapes, and then secured them all together using masking tape and foil so that I could start the base of the body. It was a little bit tedious getting them all into place, so I did use some clay just to help out when I was putting on the masking tape and foil, just so that it wouldn't all fall apart while I was trying to do it, because I did have that issue a few times. When I no longer needed the clay, I just wiggled them all out of there and then kept adding more foil to secure them all together. Using my mighty rolling pin, I whacked the clay until it got super warm so that I could mould it easier and it wouldn't hurt my hands. I have bruises from the past. I rolled it out into a nice thin sheet of clay and laid it over the body to secure in all of the foil and the masking tape that I had laid on earlier, and to start bulking out the shape. Sometimes it's useful just to use your fingers to blend clay instead of tools, as it gets a nice smoother finish when in an area that isn't hard to get to. Between the tentacles I did have to use my tools a little bit, just because getting your fingers between them is a little bit more difficult. To start adding clay on the tentacles, I rolled them out and cut a slit down the middle to fit the wire into, instead of trying to wrap them with clay in a very strange way, which I have tried before. This is the best way to do it, in my opinion. Of course, I had to do this 8 separate times, which does get a bit boring after a while, but seeing them all come together in a nice satisfying way and having them all blend into the body nicely was definitely satisfying. I then whipped out my Cosclay, the clay that bends after it bakes, to start working on the next animal body part, which was a zebra shark. This is super interesting to me. I think sharks are amazing. So to create the tail, I cut out this kind of spiky shape and then pinched the edges to make them blend a bit better, and then obviously cut out the random bumps and lumps that I made along the way. I then, similarly to the tentacles, cut a slit down the middle of the tail and put the wire in it, making sure to hide it. The best thing about Cosclay is that it bends after you bake it. Having wire in the centre of it, it holds its shape when it bends. I then began working on the next body part, an otter. Well, an otter's head. This, again, I think it turned out really cute, even though he looked very aggressive, but I added little balls on the face, blended them out as the little muzzle. No, not muzzle. I don't know what it's called. The little bits on the face, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. And then I started working on the mouth, making sure there was enough room in the mouth for the teeth and the tongue. And also after I had baked the zebra shark tail, I added it on just by using a bit of clay and blending it into the Cosclay, which actually came out really smooth. For the otter's tongue, I just pressed a bit of clay and cut it to size, placing it in the back of the mouth so that it curls up a little, so it kind of looks like he's shouting aggressively. And then started to add the sharp little teeth, 2 big ones at the bottom, 2 big ones on the top, and a couple of little ones kind of in between them. And he's starting to look very angry. And then added on the nose also, blending it out and adding the little nostrils too. Using my ball tool, I caved in the eyes for the eye sockets so that I could press in the eyeballs, and also use tiny slits of clay as the eyelids on top. again, he just keeps looking angrier. I also used, again, Cosclay to make the ears. You might be wondering, this isn't what otter ears look like. Well, that's because it's a part of the next animal, and I don't even know if I should be able to call it an animal because, I don't know. It's a goblin. I'm gonna do more goblin stuff later though, so don't worry. I used my pointed ball tool, not really a ball tool, but my pointed tool to scrape into the face to make the fur texture of the otter. I also just added this extra indent to the bottom of the tentacles where something else will be. I also then added a bit more extra height to the body so that when the head comes it'll be a bit taller. And then, after 4 years, I got my hand on another tube of clay glue. It felt so nice to be able to actually squeeze it out of the bottle instead of having to use a toothpick to scoop it out because it was so hard and thick. I then attached the head, again, using the clay glue obviously, and some extra clay to blend it in smoothly. And then what's this little lump of clay? I don't know. It's actually the beak for the octopus, because they have those sometimes. So I just quickly attached it to the bottom using some extra clay to keep it held in there. And then back to the Cosclay we go to start working on the next body part, which I have actually mashed 2 comments into one, kinda killing 2 birds with 1 stone. A cat and a tiger, because that's pretty much the same animal, just one's a bit bigger and just looks a bit different and is like a different animal altogether. But either way, this is a tiger's tail, otherwise known as a cat's tail. I will be doing tiger stripes, and this isn't the only part that's going to be related to the tiger, similar to the goblin. There will be more later. And then while that's baking, I go straight onto the next body part. Now, you might have noticed earlier that I blanked out a part of someone's comment. When designing this, I accidentally added 2 suggestions from the same person. But because of how it turned out, I didn't really want to change that because it was really fun, kind of funny. So this time, I added dragon. Obviously just doing the dragon wings, as you can see. To do the wings, I cut out these kind of spiky bumps so that I could attach them to the bone of the wing. And I did kind of, I guess, trace the previous one so that they looked pretty much identical. I attached them just by sticking them on and blending them using one of my silicone tools. It did have a chance of falling off or breaking, but I did then later go in and cut little slits, and in those slits I added metal wire for more stability and also to poke out a little bit. It seems like, you know, the bone, the little spiny bony bits that come out of wings that don't really exist. So it doesn't really matter what they look like, but I think they still look pretty cool. I added little bits of clay on top of these wires so that the bony bits would be visible, and also so that I could add more texture onto them later. I then gently glided one of my silicone tools over the skin areas of the wings to create texture and make it look like the skin is stretched and a bit pulled out. I then used my ball tool and rapidly dotted it over the backbone of the wing and also the little itty bitty bones that come out the bottom of it that hold together the skin. It took me quite a while to do all of this, and it took a bit of a toll on my hands, but it definitely looks nice like scales. I then did the exact same thing for the other wing, but because that's boring, I'm not going to show you it. you get the gist of it because I just showed you the entire process. Then back to the tiger's tail, I whack it into the back just above the shark tail and again attach it with some more clay. After having baked the wings as well, I also shoved them into the back and added clay to attach them. Since there's wire in the middle of the Cosclay, I can actually bend them and so that they hold their place. So I actually use that to my advantage to give the wings slightly more of a bend that it lost in the oven while it was baking. Similar but not quite the same as how I did the little dots on top of the wings earlier, I kind of ran my ball tool along this bit to create some more texture. I then started to work on some weapons. Why weapons? Well, it's because of the goblin part. I decided to give the Crag and Charter Gobbler a bunch of different weapons from the game Baldur's Gate by Larian Studios. Very specific. So I started off with a goblin scimitar. I also made a goblin axe, a goblin bow, a short sword, and a shield for all the little tentacles to hold onto. I use the same techniques for pretty much all of the weapons. So I started off with the handle. I then made, using a flat piece of clay, the metal part that actually does the damage. And then I just added texture. A lot of them also did include like bandages or like string to hold it into place since they are kind of basic weapons. So this one is the short sword. Like I just said, it has kind of these bandages around the handle. And then I also had a bent piece of wire for the bow, where I used some Cosclay as well for the string. And I also made a shield out of slightly thicker clay and just cut it into shape, added the little metal rim, and then added the backing. It's pretty much done. They were all quite easy to make since they're quite small. And then I worked on the suctions for the tentacles. All I did with these is just adding smaller and smaller, as you go down, balls where I flattened them to make the suctions. I had to do this so many times and it took quite a few hours to get them all. Right at the end, the suctions are quite small, and right at the beginning they're quite big, so it used quite a lot of clay between it all. But it was definitely fun to make, and it adds a lot of detail and texture, which I really enjoy. I then added these little flaps of clay just to tie together each of the tentacles as well. And then I started to add the weapons. So the shield goes on the kind of upright tentacle there, as well as the axe, which I slightly destroyed the tentacle to get in. And the bow goes down there. The scimitar goes on another one down there. I did use the clay glue for all of them as well, so that they all held in place, not just using the clay itself. Also, I told you earlier that I would be reusing that texture that I did on the dragon's wings, so I used it on the tentacles. I just rammed the ball tool into it again millions and millions of times to add this sort of bumpy texture. Well, I guess it's kind of the opposite of bumpy, but you know what I mean. And yeah, it gives it a very nice texture, similar to how an octopus would actually look. Went back in with that scratchy tool that I used for the head earlier and continued it all the way down to the body, as pretty much the whole head and body would be the part of the otter. So I just continued it all the way down. I very rarely leave areas untextured, so obviously I couldn't leave this area untextured, so I just went in, scratched it all in. And luckily for me, that was the last texturing I had to do. So to start off with the painting, after I baked it, I went in with this nice dark red for the bony bits, as I like to call them, for the dragon's wings, on both sides of course. I then went in with this kind of creamy colour, which I did change a lot later, for the zebra shark tail. I then again went in later and used the same colour on the skin parts of the wings. Also, what is that? I forgot to show that in the video. How dare I? But you get the gist. I did it the exact same way as I did the tail. Then with this kind of blood red orange, which I didn't mean to make this colour and I did change it later, I did the tiger tail. And then with that same colour, you'll see I go in on the tentacles. You remember I said earlier I'd be doing tiger stripes? Well, I'm not just going to be doing that on the tail. I will be adding tiger stripes all over the tentacles too, which I think is quite interesting. When I started painting the tentacles orange, I was like, oh, this is going to be so weird, orange tentacles. And then I remembered that most octopuses have orange tentacles a lot of the time, and I was just being over dramatic. But when painting them, I did avoid the suctions as I was going to be painting them a different colour later. Then again, like I said, I went in on the skin of the dragon's wings and used the same colour as I did on the zebra shark's tail. Now they look a bit bland right now, just red and this kind of yellowish colour, but I do add a lot of weird texture on later and you'll see in a bit. I then use this very light yellow. It's pretty much white with a very slight hint of yellow for the suctions on the tentacles. They might look a little bit messy right now, but I do later on go and touch them all up to make sure that they look smooth and not encroaching on the orange colour. Then I delicately go over every single one of the suctions with this very light pink. You might not even be able to tell that there's pink, but you might be able to see just a little bit of colour there. And it actually makes them look really nice. I really enjoy how the tentacles and the suctions have come out. I then go in with this slightly darker tone of the yellow and add little lines on the wings. Using my paintbrush, I add this texture using kind of this very dark reddish black colour, and then my ball tool, adding the spots so that it does look like a zebra shark's tail. And using a slightly lighter orange, I dry brush over the tentacles to bring out the detail that I added. And then using black, I delicately go over every single one of the tentacles and the tail and make the tiger stripes. It took absolutely ages to do these, but they came out very nicely. And you could definitely tell that they resemble a tiger's tail. And for once, I didn't actually have to worry about how much my hands were shaking because I wasn't following any specific pattern. Then, with the same texture as I used on the zebra shark's tail, I added dots all over the wings. This was the texture I was talking about, just to make them look a lot more interesting, and I think it really works. Kind of adds this nice stippling effect, and it does make them look just a little bit dirty, but I do enjoy how they look. Then going in with this brown, I start to colour the otter section. I do it pretty much all over the body except for the chest and the mouth area, which I do go in with a slightly lighter colour. It's not quite white, but it's pretty much white. And I do my best to blend it in with the tentacles below, kind of dry brushing between the brown and the orange. And then with a slightly lighter brown, I just dry brush over all of that fur detail on the back, the front and the face. To finish off the otter part, I painted the inside of the mouse a nice pink colour and also used a bit of red to add some differentiation in the colour in there, I guess. I painted the teeth a pearly white, the nose a slightly dark, almost black brown colour, and then the eyes the same colour but with highlights and a bit of white. I then mixed some silver paint with a bit of brown and yellow to get kind of a musty silver colour. I don't know what to call it. Pretty much silver, so that I could add it to all of the weapons except for the bow, and then use my sponge to make them look kind of rusty in a way, giving it that stippling kind of texture. Painted the bandages like a greyish yellow and then sponged on red. You could probably imagine what that symbolises, I guess. Added a bit more on the scimitar as well because I didn't think it was nearly enough. And then for the finishing touch, I used this lovely gloss and glazed the entire thing. The tentacles, the wings, everything. And then it's finished. The Kraken Charter Gobbler. Kraken, the Kraken Dragon. Charter, Shark Otter. Gobbler, Goblin Tiger. That's the thought process I went through to get that name. It could have gone many different ways, but that's what I chose, and I think it suits this thing the best. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I spent a lot of time, and I think it was so nice to do something related to you, my subscribers, and the community. It's almost as if you all kind of took a little bit of a part in this, and I really, again, appreciate you for helping me get to 200 and now almost 250 subscribers. If you'd like, you can like the video, it'll help me and help boost the video, and potentially subscribe. That means in the future I'll give you more things like this and other things as well. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day. Bye bye!